Hello, Detroit Sports Nation. It's Ryan from Sports Carnage Podcast. We are back again, unfortunately, with another Detroit Pistons loss. This one came to the hands of the Philadelphia 76ers. Um, they were playing without Joel Embiid. Detroit was entering, obviously, without Blake, without Reggie Jackson. This gives some time for some people to join. You guys might be watching the Michigan game. I actually went to the Michigan State game earlier, but then left after they gave up their third touchdown in the first half. So not a good game for me. But after the Michigan game, I should be back on here. So if you guys are more football fans, you can tune into then too. That'll probably be about an hour or so. But as far as the Pistons game tonight, it's certainly a game that you liked on the schedule when you went in. Just considering that Philadelphia didn't have their best player with them. Joel Embiid was ruled out. So is Reggie Jackson. But Reggie Jackson hadn't been playing great anyway. And actually, instead of Derrick Rose drawing the start, Tim Frazier drew the start tonight. Not that it mattered because, like Derrick Rose had at least one of the, probably the other game too, because Reggie got hurt, is Derrick Rose played more minutes than any other point guard. He was at 27 tonight, while Frazier was at 21. And that's kind of where Dwayne Casey's been keeping him around the first couple games is really the 27-minute mark. And if you're taking a positive from tonight, one of the other positives is Derrick Rose, and just he continues to shoot the ball lights out. He had 31 points tonight on 21 shots, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. So it was an incredibly efficient performance from him in terms of shooting the ball. But what you didn't like to see, and maybe what is kind of keeping him out of that starting lineup, is tonight really, as opposed to any other night, the turnovers for Ford Rose specifically became a problem when he turned it over against – who did they play second? When they turned it over against the Hawks, it was really he was just trying to do too much, and they were pressing late in the game. When he turned it over tonight, there were a couple critical mistakes that he made, and they're in critical parts of the game where you can't have those. So he did finish with 6 turnovers as well. Some other Pistons that played well. Christian Wood got 19 minutes, and he turned in 11 points and 5 boards with that. So showing, kind of wasn't a mistake to leave him on the roster. Andre Drummond played with foul trouble most of the night. He was still able to record a double-double, but he fouled out at the very end, and I know he picked up his third foul really, really early in the second quarter. There was like 8.5 minutes left. Markieff Morris played well, 17 points, 6 boards. So it was a lot of the guys that you would have to have step up. They did step up in order for the Pistons usually to pull out a W. Luke Kennard again, 16 points on 6 of 11 shooting. So it was a very efficient performance from everyone in terms of shooting the ball. Not everyone, but most of the players had a really good shooting night. The Pistons finished with, basically about 54% from the field, which would have been probably enough to win if they didn't shoot so bad from the free throw line. They shot 36 free throws and only made 21 of them. So if you're going to point to really 2 reasons why the Pistons lost tonight, you can boil it down to turnovers, where they had, I think it was 22 turnovers, 22 or 23. Yeah, Pistons had 23 and Philly had 22. And then the free throws. They missed 15 of them, like I said, and throughout the course of the game, especially when Philadelphia was making their run back in the third quarter, that's what really, really hurt the Pistons. It was terrible basketball in the fourth. It was. So, like the back end of the third quarter and then the entire fourth quarter, the Pistons kind of fell off. They had a 13-point lead. It was 70-57 in the third quarter, and that's where the good teams are usually able to, just put their foot on the neck of the competition and run away with the game. And that's not what the Pistons were able to do tonight. Part of that was with Andre Drummond being out because of foul trouble, but there's really no excuse when, the Sixers didn't have Embiid for the whole night. Ex-Piston Tobias Harris, I don't know if he tried to make it a revenge game against us. I don't think he has any ill will towards the organization, but he turned out an incredibly efficient performance. He went 29 points, 7 boards on 10-15 shooting, 4-6 from 3. Who else played well? Al Horford had a really nice game, 23 points, 9 boards, 5 assists. Had some really big shots there at the end. Ben Simmons, 13 points, 10 assists, 4 rebounds, and 7 steals for him. So while he didn't have the greatest shooting night, and even he got into some foul trouble, much akin to what Drummond got into, Simmons was able to stay active on the defensive end and really, make his time on the court, valuable. I think he finished with the He didn't finish with the highest plus minus on the team, only because some of our bench unit did very poorly. But +9, and he played 34 and 35 minutes, in the game, which was tied for second with Philadelphia. Only Josh Richardson played more, and Josh Richardson, another guy who on the stat sheet you probably don't look at it as an incredibly great game. He only shot 4 of 12. He went 10 points and 6 assists, 3 turnovers. But if you watch the game, you could tell how active he was on the defensive end, and he was constantly, affecting shots, kind of getting into passing lanes and really just causing havoc for the Pistons. Adam Hamilton says, "Go Blue." Yeah, they're looking real good right now. Like I said, we're probably going to be discussing the Michigan game, the Michigan-Notre Dame game on Sports Carnage, which should drop next Thursday. Sports Carnage podcast, so go check it out if you haven't. We did a little prelude to the game, of course, this last Thursday, so if you haven't checked that out, the little description there that says, Ryan from Sports Carnage podcast, you can just hit there, and then eventually you'll find the link. It's still 17-0. And like I said, I'm going to be going live after the Michigan-Notre Dame game as well. So you're going to see just a little bit more of me. Hopefully you want to. Derrick Rose career looks like his old MVP. So, yeah, Rose has been one of the he's probably been the brightest spot for the Pistons going so far this year. We hope we can keep it up. Obviously, you're always going to hope that his health is in order. But I think what, tonight kind of showed you with Tim Frazier drawing the start over Derrick Rose is that really no matter what, unless there's like a DEFCON 5 level situation, you're not going to see Rose in the starting lineup, only because Casey wants to not only limit his minutes, but he wants to put Derrick Rose on the floor when it's almost going to be indisputable that he's the best player. Matching Derrick Rose not only with our second unit with Luke Kennard, but going against the other team's second unit as well. That way, he's able to get the most effectiveness out of his minutes, and that's going to allow our starters to rest a little bit more, and then that's going to force the other team to maybe pull some of their bench guys and get their starters a little bit more winded, towards the end of the game, where obviously tonight the fourth quarter didn't go as we planned. But going forward, if the other team has, their guys are all gassed in the fourth, and then our guys are fresh because Derrick Rose, has played so well and taken such a load off our starting unit, those are results that we should see flip tonight. We should be the team that's able to pull away in the fourth quarter. I want to see this team is full potential. Blake and Reggie healthy again, and less turnovers. This team would look very good. Hunter, I definitely got to agree with that. One of the things that we've obviously been missing is Blake Griffin. That's the best player, is the most important player. He's the guy who the entire offense runs through. And I just want to see Reggie Jackson healthy again, because when he's healthy, he's a really good pick and roll partner with Andre. I don't know if you guys saw the interview he did where he was talking about how much he cherished playing with Andre Drummond. But those guys are, besides just being like teammates and liking each other on the basketball court, those guys are like best friends. And usually when you have that situation in the NBA and you've been playing with a guy for so long and you genuinely like that individual, usually your results are going to show from it, because you guys not only are you just kind of better in tune on the basketball court, but usually the locker room kind of follows suit. And with Blake, with Andre, and with Reggie, I think those are guys that a lot of the locker room respects. I know Reggie Jackson and Andre Drummond don't have the best reputation for leadership, certainly among the fan base, or probably even in like NBA circles. If you just went on Twitter or kind of listened to what some of the analysts say. But you've never really heard about these guys having a problem in the locker room, and Blake is just kind of unanimously respected. So I think when the Pistons do get fully healthy, that's what could be the silver lining from these early season injuries with Blake and with Reggie, is that when they come back, the guys who are forced to step up, guys like Markieff Morris, Christian Wood getting a little bit more burn tonight, even Tim Frazier as just the third point guard on the roster, or the third point guard off the bench, second off the bench, but you guys get what I'm saying. Those guys, they should have a little bit more seasoning with this team, and they should be able to just communicate better on the floor, because they've played more meaningful minutes than I'm sure they were supposed to. Jim Wells' team's got a lot of issues. They do. I don't expect that you'll see them shoot that poorly from the free throw line again. Again, they shot under 60%, so that's probably an anomaly. Not that they're going to be a great 3-point shooting team, but that's not something that they're going to do, on a regular basis and miss 15 free throws in a game. But they do have a lot of issues defensively still. You can see that they're not getting back on defense. They look sloppy with their turnovers, and they take really just stupid fouls at times. They're a lot tonight, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it seemed like the Sixers were getting a lot of 3-point plays from fouls that you probably didn't need to commit, when you could just let the guy go have the basket because you're in such a bad position that he's going to score really either way. Philly has Detroit's number the last couple of years. Yeah, I mean, outside of that Blake 50-point game that they had last year, Philly, Joel Embiid, they've been a better team than the Pistons have the last couple of years. So it's not a team like the Jazz. Even when the Pistons were really good, the Pistons could never, ever go into Utah and win. But the Sixers have been better than the Pistons for a while, and that Embiid and Drummond, sort of beef, if you will, that hasn't helped kind of die things down, where you think a team like Philly might then overlook the Pistons because they think, all we have to do is show up and beat them. Because you've had that Embiid and Drummond, kind of conflict, what's happened is Philly always takes these games seriously, and it usually ends up showing. Tobias Harris, no, I don't think so. It's not revenge as an ex-Piston. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, he had a nice career here, and it's not like he really left on bad terms. The Pistons didn't cut him or anything. He was traded, but it wasn't really an unexpected decision for the Pistons to make. I don't think people thought the Pistons were going to go get Blake Griffin, which is what they got from the Tobias Harris trade. But throughout that trade deadline, Tobias Harris was a guy that you could hear. There were just rumors and logistics that made sense for the Pistons to end up moving him. I think as an athlete, you're probably always looking for a team that, quote unquote, spurned you. And again, even if he doesn't feel like the Pistons did him wrong, for him to come back and then put on a show with some of his ex-teammates. I know they don't have a lot here from his time in Detroit, but he still had guys like, Reggie, who didn't play tonight, Drummond. I think he had a year or like half a year with Luke here too. So they're always, you just want to go ahead and, not necessarily show those guys up, but, you're an athlete. It's competitive. You're playing against them. These are fans who still do have a lot of love for Tobias Harris, just because he was such kind of like a model citizen type player when he was here. Are you doing a podcast after the Lions game on Sunday? That is the plan. So the plan is to go Facebook Live after Sunday. So I'll be doing exactly what I'm doing here with the Pistons for the Lions game on Sunday. We are going to be recording our podcast, the Sports Carnage podcast, on Tuesday, and then that's going to drop on Thursday. And depending on what happens with the Lions game, we usually do a pretty good job of talking about the Lions because we know that's what you guys want to hear. And at least 3 of us, Dylan is a Bears fan, spoiler alert, but 3 out of the 4 of us are Lions fans. So, we should have definitely some Lions talk. On this week, it'll just be, kind of determining on the outcome whether or not it's good or bad. But I do expect them to win. Let's face it, the Pistons are not that good. Derrick Rose can't play that many minutes. So 27 minutes is probably about where you want Derrick Rose playing, and you certainly don't want him up at 35 because that's how he's going to get hurt. Your Pistons are not that good. Relatively, I can see why you would say that. This isn't a team that I see finishing any higher, than like 7th in the East, but that's why you want to win games like this, because even if I think that they're not going to be fighting for more than like a 7th or an 8th seed, there is usually that 1 to 2 game difference between teams that are the 3, the 4, the 4, the 5, and the 5 and the 6. And that obviously helps you with first round matchups. And if you're talking about the 4-5, that can even help you with home court advantage in the first round. There's probably not going to be a 1 or 2 game difference between like Milwaukee and Philadelphia. Just for, Milwaukee, say they win 60 games and then Philadelphia wins 53 or something like that, and they end up being the 1 or the 2. So in that aspect, probably not every game matters for a team like the Bucks, but for a team like the Pistons, where there's even a huge difference between the 7th seed and like the 6th seed who you might potentially play. In that aspect, I do think every game matters, even, the third game of an 82-game season. Will Blake be back Monday versus the Pacers? No. Their original report, let's say no, like I have some type of insider knowledge. So the original report was that he was going to be sat out the entire first week or through the first week of November. So that would put him back not Monday against the Pacers, but their next game against the Pacers is like November 8th, I want to say. So that would be the game to kind of keep an eye on for Blake returning. And not that they've, kind of backtracked or backpedaled at all on Blake's expected recovery time. But unless they say anything, that's the game that I'm eyeing for Blake to come back. But, I mean, they could come out tomorrow and say, hey, he's had a really good recovery. We're going to bring him back. I don't expect them to do that. But, no, I'd say it's a pretty safe bet he's not going to play Monday. Besides Rose and Luke, this team doesn't really seem like they're playing as a team besides Rose and Luke. Yeah, I mean, so Markieff Morris, he's put up a lot of shots, which I think I said this on their opening night broadcast, or the opening night live I did when they beat the Pacers, is you want to see a guy coming in and having that confidence to shoot and not being so passive. I don't think team ball is really the issue. I think they do have a lot of turnovers. Some of that can probably just be because the team as a whole, they haven't played together so much, especially with not some of the guys that have had to play, a guy like Tony Snell or a guy like Markieff Morris, who we just mentioned, even Derrick Rose. These are guys who they haven't played with this unit a lot. If Blake was here, I think that'd be a lot different. But I don't really think anybody's playing like selfish basketball, even with Reggie here. I don't know. I don't have the box scores in front of me, but it didn't really seem like he shot more than – he probably didn't shoot 15 shots in any of the games that he played. So I think they're doing a good job of trying to find the open man. It's really just about hitting the shots and finding guys in spots where they want to be. Because you saw it tonight, even with a guy like so there's a play with Thon and Luke, who have played together, for a minute now, because Thon obviously got added last season, where Luke wanted to pop back out and get the ball from Thon, and Thon thought he was going to cut. So Thon threw it thinking Luke was going to, be cutting and receive the ball there. And, Luke popped back out to the three-point line, and then the ball just ended up rolling out of bounds. So there are things like that they can fix, which I think will greatly help their turnovers. And where I think you see a lot of kind of Derrick Rose turnovers, and I don't know if this is something that will get better with the chemistry, is – because other guys have to get used to this. It's when Derrick Rose goes up for a shot and he doesn't necessarily have it, he'll try to pass out of the shot as opposed to, like forcing it up. But it seems like he makes that decision kind of at the last second. So when our players see that, I think when they see Rose go up, they're thinking this is going to be a ball that's going to come off the rim. So that's where their eye's going. And then, D Rose makes the split decision to pass it to him, and he passes it to somebody that's either, not paying attention or just not there. No play Slay. I think Darius Slay ended up on the injury report. You should let your girls sit next. You said that last week too, John. Against the Lions. We only got one chair. I'm sorry, John. Maybe you could come over. We could have dinner. I believe Tobias Harris had one of his best seasons in his career as a Piston if you look back at the 15-16 season when Stan Van Gundy was coach. Yeah, we gave Tobias Harris every opportunity to shine when he was here. I was reading on Yahoo Sports, Reggie may get traded. Have you heard that? So for the last couple of years, trading Reggie Jackson has been something that's been put out there. Last year was put out that the Pistons were even shopping Reggie Jackson, and I think even like the offseason before that. So it makes a lot of sense to trade Reggie Jackson. I haven't heard an official rumor about it yet this year, but would it shock me to know that the Pistons are always trying to find a suitor for Reggie? No, it wouldn't at all. Because like I said, even when Stan Van Gundy was here, Reggie Jackson was somebody that was always on the trade block, partly because of his health, partly because there are his contract too, and after he signed it is when he really started having a lot of the health issues, so it didn't seem like he would live up to the contract, and it seemed like him and Excuse me. It didn't seem like he was just the best fit for our offense. I think 2 years ago, there was rumors about a Ricky Rubio for a Reggie Jackson swap that obviously didn't end up coming to fruition. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if Reggie got traded. I do think it's probably actually less likely this year, though, only because now his contract is coming off the books. And that expiring of, I want to say it's $16 million, that's something that's more valuable to the Pistons than it was even last year. So if they do trade him, they should get better value for him, just kind of solely based on that. Or if they kept him this year, I wouldn't be mad. Previous years I wanted to trade him, but we'll have $16 million, like I said, coming off the books. If we end up just keeping Reggie for the rest of the year and don't end up signing him. So if you think you can do more with the $16 million that you're going to have freed up in your cap space than you think you're going to get for him, via trade before the trade deadline, then to me it definitely makes sense to keep Reggie Jackson. See the next game on the Pistons schedule. The next game that they have, Monday against the Pacers. I should know because somebody asked me, if Blake was playing there. Monday against the Pacers, 10:28, 7 p.m. Hopefully we can break this snide against the team that gave us our first and only win on the year. Obviously you don't want to lose 3 games in a row ever. Our injury report right now: Reggie Jackson day to day, Louis King maybe day to day, Sekou Doumbouya still day to day in concussion protocol, and then Blake Griffin obviously out. And then the Pacers will be without Oladipo, and right now Jeremy Lamb is day to day. So on Monday, if we can get an extra performance like we got from Andre in the first game, we should be sitting pretty. But this is another game at home, and like I said, kind of every game matters when you're a team like the Pistons and you feel like you're going to be fighting for, if not the playoffs, at least seeding at the very kind of back end of the conference. And with 3 home games to start, your first 4 games of the year, you don't want to lose all of them, especially when you lost, especially when you won the first game on the road against the team that you're probably going to end up fighting with for the playoff spot, not physically fighting. No more malice at the Palace. Bro, I love my Detroit teams, but there's no hope. Yeah, if you really want hope, it's not necessarily a Detroit team, but Michigan State basketball, they might do it. They just got bad news about Josh Langford and that he said he recovered a setback, but they'll start the season number 1. And they got hopefully the best team returning. So that's who I'm hopeful for. And even the Pistons, I think it'll be an exciting season, even if they make the playoffs. They're not going to be, obviously like a number 1 seed or anything like that. But I do want to see what this team looks like when they're fully healthy, like one of you guys mentioned earlier. But that's pretty much what we have for the Pistons tonight. I got to get back to this Michigan Notre Dame game. So when I get on here in probably 45 minutes or so, I'm not just talking out my behind. Out of a game that I didn't watch. So I will see you guys then. If you're football fans, obviously come join us. If not, go ahead and still join us on our Sports Carnage podcast. Like I said, it comes out every Thursday. You can follow us on Twitter, just add Sports Carnage, on Facebook, Sports Carnage podcast. It's in this caption, this little link in our Facebook Live status thing. So you can click on that and then see all of our stuff. Or else we have Podbeans, iTunes, and then even if you just type in Sports Carnage Podcast in Google, let's all do a thought experiment together. Open up your Google browsers, Sports Space Carnage Space Podcast. Hit enter. Boom, you'll see a Sports Carnage on Apple Podcast. And then you'll see podcast right below. Sports Carnage episode 49. Lions being Lions. Sports Carnage episode 48. Lions got boom. Sports Carnage episode 40. What happened to 47? Sports Carnage episode 46. I don't know why it goes like that, but you guys can see, just kind of follow us there. But I just got to turn attention to hockey for a sec. Posted earlier couple hours on this and page. I show a lot of stuff about Jeff Bashel. Is he finally on the hot seat and possibly the Red Wings? And he just scored a TD. I did see that from our podcast, like group messaging on Facebook. Paul's mad that Michigan got robbed of a shutout, but it's Paul's birthday, so happy birthday to to Paul, definitely the biggest Michigan fan on the podcast, the only Michigan fan on the podcast, actually. Albert, I don't know about that, but I will say some of my more hockey knowledgeable friends at Detroit Sports Nation, namely Michael and Nate and Don. They've talked about how they can definitely see a scenario where Blashill ends up getting canned, but it didn't sound to them, since the Red Wings were picked to finish basically last in their division anyway, for them to be last, it doesn't really make sense to fire the coach just because he doesn't have the horses to do it. But obviously, Blashill wasn't Yzerman's guy when he came here, so that's all I really have for hockey. But I do have to get going. Again, make sure you guys find Sports Carnage wherever you can find it, either through the link, Google, iTunes, iTunes, obviously Apple Podcasts, Podbean, everywhere else, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Now we're on YouTube channels where you can see more reaction videos like this. I post them all after I'm doing them live here for you guys, so that's pretty cool. But thank you guys for joining me, and like I said, I'll see you in a couple minutes, not a couple minutes, in probably about 45 minutes for the end of the Michigan Notre Dame game. Until then, make sure you stay safe.